Big news that children over 6 months old can be vaccinated. I want to ask you from the very beginning. I have some people who they're afraid, they're concerned, they don't want to vaccinate their 1 year old or their 2 year old. They have some concerns. What's your reaction to that?
Well, first thing that's important is to never disrespect their concern, because it is understandable. I mean, I'm a parent myself, and when my children were that age, I would have had a lot of questions about any intervention that was going to be applied to my children. So what I would do is to try and present them with the facts to alleviate that concern. And the facts are as follows: that the vaccines that we're talking about, the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines, have been shown in randomized placebo-controlled trials to be highly safe and highly effective. So that's just scientific facts and reality. The other issue that's important, that's not well appreciated, is that many people believe that COVID is a trivial disease in children. It is true that children, for the most part, do much better and have less severe disease than adults, particularly elderly adults and those with underlying condition. But it is incorrect to say that children are exempt from the potential of severe consequences. And in fact, in that age group, Clay, children now, over 400 of them have died of COVID since the beginning of the outbreak, and thousands have been hospitalized. So there are a couple of things parents need to understand. We understand your perhaps hesitancy and concern, but when you look at the facts, the risk benefit of the vaccine weigh very, very heavily in favor of the benefit.
Dr. Fauci, it appears that people are operating like the pandemic is over. I'm sure you've heard Broadway, they're making masks optional. Where are we now? Are we at the tail end of this? Where are we?
Well, first of all, clear fact, it isn't over. We're still getting an average of about 100,000 cases a day. And that's a gross underestimate, because many people, they get infected, they get mild to moderate symptoms, and they determine they're infected through a rapid antigen test, but they never report it to anybody. So the numbers are probably an underestimate, number one. Number two, we don't really know where we are in this outbreak, because it's fooled us so many times. When you think it's going down, then you get another surge and it goes up. In general, the numbers are beginning to stabilize and come down. That's good news, but we can't prematurely declare victory, particularly in those areas of the country where there's still a lot of viral dynamics. So we've got to do the things that we know work. We've got to get people vaccinated. Those who are vaccinated got to be boosted. And when you're in a situation, particularly when you're in an area of the country where there's a high degree of viral dynamics, when you're in an indoor congregate setting, particularly in places where there's poor ventilation, it would be prudent to wear a mask.
Before you go, I have to ask you this. It is LGBT Pride Month, and I saw you in a documentary. It's an old documentary, but it's called How to Survive a Plague. And it was about the HIV/AIDS epidemic that really hit gay men in New York and San Francisco and so on. What can we learn from the advocates back then with the HIV/AIDS epidemic, who sadly are no longer with us? What can we learn moving forward when it comes to healthcare and specifically fully surviving COVID?
Well, the activists back then played a major positive impact and role in not only the effort scientifically and public health wise, but also to call attention to the fact that there were risks clearly in the LGBT community for HIV. And when you call attention to it, you get people to do those things to protect themselves, like pre-exposure prophylaxis and wearing a condom and things like that. So what the gay population accomplished back then in the 80s was really extraordinary in a very, very positive way.
Yeah, and it appears right now we have people who are doing the exact opposite. They appear to be anti-activists when it comes to COVID. So
yeah, that's true. I think we have a lot to learn from the activists of HIV back in the mid to late 80s.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on and informing us. Like I said, the news is children over 6 months old, they can get vaccinated. I'm vaccinated. I'm also boosted. I actually had the Johnson and Johnson early on, and I'm doing okay. So I want to thank you for coming on, Dr. Anthony Fauci. You have a good day. Be safe, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.